Okay, welcome to our next mini lecture on parasites. And so, it's interesting for me for this chapter because it sort of mirrors the discussion that I went into much more detail on in terms of predator-prey, sort of consumer resource interactions. And this is the idea that parasites, because they have a negative interaction on their hosts, can shape their fitness. And so the interaction can be acted on by natural selection for the host. And because the parasite's fitness is directly tied to how well it does in the host, natural selection can act on that also, right? And so because of this, evolution has ended up making, out of thin air via natural selection, all sorts of adaptations where that maximize the fitness of hosts or that maximize the fitness of parasites in given cases, right? And these lead to all sorts of cool coevolutionary dynamics and sort of community dynamics in the same way that other consumptive interactions do. And the first thing here is that your book really hits on this arms race idea. So we talked a little bit about an arms race. The escape and radiate hypothesis I talked about with Ehrlich and Raven is sort of an arms race. But this idea of an arms race is that coevolution drives co-adaptation, right? So an arms race is a coevolutionary process where two species are evolving together and constantly selection is favoring small advantages in each of them, and that ratchets up this competition, ratchets up the adaptations in each party. In the cases of hosts and parasites, coevolutionary arms races ratchet up host defenses and parasites' counter defenses. And we see all kinds of crazy things that happen. We see immune systems evolve, right? Especially for endoparasites. Immune systems evolve in hosts to recognize these parasites that cause negative fitness impacts. And then parasites evolve all sorts of crazy immune tricking / evasion / suppression adaptations, right? And then hosts might evolve behavioral avoidance, right? Maybe you evolve a preference to spend less time away from the water where your parasite lives. And parasites can evolve things like timing or behavioral manipulation, like I showed you with the fungal parasite in those beetles, right? That maximize the likelihood of dispersal, that get over this behavioral avoidance, right? Hosts might develop barriers, skin, stickiness, thick cuticles in plants that stop parasitoids from laying their eggs in the leaves, for example. And then parasites evolve, defenses to penetrate barriers, to change to change the protein structure. They evolve all sorts of enzymes to change the protein structure of barriers, right? And then, crazily, hosts might co-opt and co-evolve with mutualists that protect, right? So you can imagine, for example, my microbiome having a set of microbes that favor or disfavor the selection of tapeworms, for example. And of course, then parasites might evolve competitive advantages over symbionts, right? And that says over symbionts. And so what's cool is that this coevolutionary arms race, in the same way that I sort of pitched the idea, that Ehrlich and Raven pitched the idea, could lead to rapid diversification of plants and Lepidoptera, butterflies, can lead to this sort of crazy diversity we see in parasites, right? So I want you guys to get that concept of an arms race. The other thing is that you really should know what coevolution is. This isn't an evolution class, but I hope that you sort of understand what coevolution is. And coevolution is a process of reciprocal selection by natural, or reciprocal adaptation by natural selection, right? There's a bunch of, I'm sure you learned this in your evolution class, a bunch of other sort of definitions of coevolution that are more or less strict. But for our purposes, we can think about reciprocal adaptation, right? Where hosts and parasites are exerting selective pressure on each other, and that this co-exertion of selective pressure can cause reciprocal adaptation, where traits change in one party and they change the selective pressures on the other party. And those selective pressures then change the traits in the first party, and they go back and change the selective environment on party 2. And that causes selection on new traits in party 2, which then change the selective environment in party 1. Right? This is the idea of coevolution, reciprocal back and forth adaptation. Right? Okay, so that's one idea that we learned from parasitism, is this idea of an arms race. It's similar to all of the kinds of arms races we talked about with predators and prey and plants and herbivores. Plants and herbivores. The other thing that your book talks about that's really cool, that is maybe a little bit different, is how our understanding of parasitism in nature has really informed and has been informed by our understanding of disease dynamics. I'm not going to go into the math here, but you should know it. That's covered in the chapter, these SEER models, susceptible, infected, recovered. I'm gonna briefly talk about them, but we're not going to do the math. But parasitism has informed our understanding of disease. So for a lot of you that I know are pre-healthcare, this is where ecology and the medical professions really do a lot of talking to each other, right? They really do a lot of talking to each other. One of the types of models that we spend a lot of time cross-talking about are these SIR, SID models. Susceptible, oh, did I tap my pencil? Susceptible, infected, recovered, or susceptible, infected, dead. And these are models where we can model population dynamics in a host, and how populations may recover via immune systems to parasites, right? So we have buckets of hosts that are either susceptible to a disease, infected by a disease, or recovered by a disease. And you can transition from S to I, right? Like you can become infected. You can transition from I to R or I to D if you die, right? And then if you have a strong immune system, this is like a forbidden transition, right? You can't be susceptible again. There's all sorts of different classes of these models, SIR, SIER, SIRD, that your book talks a little bit about. But I think this is something that is really sort of a neat place for you all who may be interested in the medical sciences to delve into the ecological literature and see how crosstalk happens here, right? So one of the cool examples in your book is this idea of myxoma and rabbits, right? And it shows that virility, or virulence, the words with these diseases sometimes mix me up, that virulence is a trait that can be selected on, right? And these models that show us that different transition probabilities from susceptible to dead or susceptible to recovered actually can help us predict how fast diseases should move through populations, how coevolution, should shape the paces of diseases moving through populations, right? And so I think this is a neat place for y'all to spend some time with your book and really read it, right? And I would say that the last thing that I think is worth thinking about is, just like all of these other consumer resource interactions we talked about, that parasites can be community engineers, right? So just like the landscape of fear that we talked about, where predators can cause top-down pressure on herbivores and that can increase diversity of plants, we can have bottom-up pressures not bottom-up, but parasites driving these same sorts of pressures that cascade through an ecosystem, right? So you can imagine a situation where we had that same crazy diagram we talked about, where there was a wolf and an herbivore and another herbivore and another herbivore and a bunch of plants, right? And these were all plus, minus predator-prey interactions, but you can add in another predator-prey interaction here that's the special case we call parasitism, right? Another special case, and this is a disease with a flagellum or something, right? And so in just the same way that predators cascade to impact multiple trophic levels, parasites can do this also. So I want you to know the examples from your book that are covered there. So I think that's probably enough depth on parasites. they're really neat interactions. They're a special case of consumer interactions. They've told us a lot about the medical field, and there's all sorts of crazy arms race evolution going on, just like there are in lots of other interactions. So thanks, folks. I really appreciate you bearing with my technical difficulties. Yeah, you guys are doing great. Grades will be up soon. There are 330 of you, so the grading is taking quite a bit of time. So yeah, bear with us, and have a wonderful spring break.